Assalamu alaikum everyone. Can everybody hear me fine? We'll just start in next 5 seconds and Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Hussein Nadeem and I'm the Executive Director of Communications and Reforms at Islamabad Policy Research Institute. I am so happy to welcome you all to the big day at Apri. For the last 2 months, our team over here has worked almost 7 days a week and day and night to undertake restructuring and reforms across the board at Apri. I would like to especially acknowledge our technical team led by Hassan and the ideation team that sits right across our office, who helped us put up our website and design the entire technical infrastructure of the modern IPRI. Today, at this event, we shall unveil the new outlook of IPRI, including our new product line, the research products, the policy products, and to showcase where do we see ourselves going in the future. Uh, as you all know, IPRI is housed at the National Security Division, Prime Minister Office of Pakistan. It was established in 1999 and is one of the oldest think tanks in Pakistan working on national security. Today's event is going to be rather short with one slight change. Dr. Mohi Yusuf, who was supposed to be the chief guest and speaker at the event, has had a very last minute emergency in Lahore, a personal emergency in Lahore, and he left Islamabad for that. But he has recorded a message for us, which we will be playing in due time. Uh, I would like to start this event by giving the mic over to our acting president and director research, Brigadier Rashid Ali Janjua. After his remarks, we will be having a short demo of our new Outlook and a brief introduction of our website and the product. And after that, we will be able to unveil our new entire Outlook. So over to you, sir, please. We're still not entirely used to Zoom, so there is some issues with our technical issues, but I think Brigadier Sab will be here with us in a second.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks, Dr. Nadeem. I welcome all the distinguished guests on this important landmark event for Islamabad Policy Research Institute, where a new website is being launched in sync with a new vision and a reoriented research direction. Islamabad Policy Research Institute has been a part of country's think tank landscape as a 20 years old bastion of ideas and purveyor of concepts that have helped shape a national consensus on issues of vital national importance. It has been working as a quasi-autonomous think tank under PM's office, and that linkage has recently been strengthened through affiliation with National Security Division, under whose stewardship this institute would function henceforth, with Dr. Moeed, the National Security Advisor and Special Assistant to Prime Minister on National Security, as its patron. Right. So a word about our new research philosophy, which is going to be premised henceforth on actionable policy input and those research products that would be of direct relevance to the policymakers and international community's linkage with collaboration on joint research and joint events would also be one of our focus. Today, the new website of the Institute is being launched in sync with a new vision and a reoriented research direction. The new initiatives and reorganization is aimed at metamorphosis of IPRI into a modern think tank with an aim to inform policy and drive change through research and dialogue on topics of contemporary relevance across all facets of national security. The main change includes reorientation of the research towards policy formulation, leveraging modern research tools and data analytics. A greater engagement with national and international research community through collaborative research like joint conferences and exchange of scholars is being planned. The fructification of research funding through business community as a part of corporate social responsibility is also being planned through the medium of research chairs. The research envelope has been widened to include strategic studies, international relations, public policy and governance, lawfare and economy. The Institute has planned to induct a pool of international experts also to add value to our research efforts. On publication front, other than enhancing the quality of IPRI journal, a digital magazine is also being planned. IPRI has also restructured its communication and global outreach wing, about which EDC and our Dr. Nadeem would brief us in a little while. The customized website, which is made catering to the future needs and objectives of the Institute is being launched today. I now invite IPRI's ED, CNR, Nadeem, to start the formal proceedings and initiate us into the new world of our new website. Over to you, Dr. Nadeem.
Thank you, sir. I'll now give a brief understanding on where we started off from on this reform agenda and what are some of the salient features of this entire restructuring that we are trying to do. I mean, one thing I want to say it at the very outside, at the very outset, uh, IPRI, as Brigadier Sab also mentioned, is part of the National Security Division Prime Minister Office. Hence, we are quasi public sector. Now, it's not easy to undertake reforms in a public sector where organizations have been used to operating in a particular way. And I will wear off my government hat right now and I'll speak more freely as a policy analyst and somebody who has a background in think tank. You see, there was a time during the Cold War when the Soviet Unions and the Americans were fighting pitch battle on of intelligence across the Berlin Wall. And for months and months, with millions of dollars of investment, there was one operation that was conducted to get a piece of paper from across the Berlin Wall. You see, that has now changed with big data and open data. You don't need that sort of intel. Essentially, what I'm saying is that getting the intelligence or data is not the problem. The real problem that the government is currently facing, especially in Pakistan, is how do we crunch that entire data, large data sets, to make sense of it all, to identify the patterns, which is one of the things that when we talk about in the public sector in my last 10 years of experience, this is one of the main problems that we are facing, that the world around us has revolutionized, it has digitized, but the government infrastructure in Pakistan and other countries in the south are still having the same HR, still having the same institutional infrastructure that do not cater to the modern and digital needs. Which is why what we see in the policy is essentially that the government is developing policy on poverty, which is not different in Balochistan from what is it in Fata. So the idea on how to actually develop a policy based on data does not exist, because the last time the real data and analytics of this region was done in 1861 by the British Raj, the Imperial Gazettes, the one I'm talking about. The problem that we are facing right now in the government is not the lack of data, but how do we process that data? How do we create it into actionable policy input which can benefit the government? Now, the second problem that comes up over here, which we analyzed during the restructuring and reform process, was the fact that the government is in a state of emergency. And this is not only in Pakistan. When I work with the Australian and the American government, the idea of strategic thinking is dead. It does not exist anymore, because every single morning you wake up, there is a new issue on the table to chase after. I initially thought that this was the case in Pakistan, but in reality, this is exactly how the modern societies and the states and the governments are operating, which is one of the reason we believe there is so much chaos that we see around the globe right now. So the idea of a think tank becomes very important, because an institution like IPRI has one leg inside of the government, so it understands the nuances of the policy, but at the same time, it has one leg outside to be able to do the strategic thinking and strategic policy making. From this specific idea, we started our restructuring process. We did not want IPRI to become a page, a file pusher, or we did not want IPRI to become a, a, a reproduction of research papers which have been published over and over again in places with different words, and providing the policy community which does not have the time and the energy to read more than one page. Now, this is one of the key problems that we were facing within the government, that at any higher level policy community, be it the prime minister, be it the chief of army staff, or be it at the secretary level, there is so much data, there is so much information that they do not have the time to read everything. Now, I come from an academic background as well, and this is one of the main problems that academia has with the policy community. That we write so many papers, we do regression analysis, and we provide so much data, but the government never utilizes it. The problem actually lies in the fact that there is such a vast difference between the two worlds. The academic world speaks a very different language. The formatting is very different from the policy world, which believes in one pagers now. So at IPRI, part of our restructuring and reorientation was how do we make IPRI a modern and useful think tank that can become an harbinger and platform of new ideas, one. Second, innovation. And how do we integrate the modern tech into, including the big data, analytical tools, artificial intelligence, to be able to provide some actionable policy input to the government, one, and to be able to project Pakistan's story globally. Now, I don't like to go too much into the narratives part because I think there is a very fine line between the narratives and the propaganda and the state. But here is one very important thing. For the last 20 years, and this is my experience being in academia and in the policy circles, that some of even the best academics that I've read, I mean, be it Fukuyama, be it anyone else in international security, international relations is inherently Eurocentric. The very tenets of international relations are based on the ideas of how the Western experiences evolved. And based on those experiences, certain theoretical frameworks, the Hobbesian models and Western democratic models were developed. Now, those same models, when we study in Pakistan and try to understand ourselves, we are left in an identity crisis. So it is a job, I believe, of think tanks and powerhouses like IPRI and other places that we're trying to develop. And how do we start to decolonize the international relations? How do we make sure that international relations are also included the way Western, non-Western societies like Pakistan or other non-Western societies are able to see the non-zero sum game, or how they see the whole entire idea of realism or liberalism, or does that even apply here in Pakistan and not? So I don't want to go too much into the academic debate or where we come from. I just want you to understand that this was the mentality and rationale behind undertaking reforms at IPRI, and how do we create it as a one useful organization which can provide policy input to the government, and second, are we able to tell a story through data backed by evidence on how do we see the world as non-Western policymakers and think tanks. So this is where we started off from. We essentially did two things. One was the datafication of IPRI, and I'll let you know exactly what that means. And the second thing was the digitization of IPRI. Under the datafication of IPRI, we pegged the entire research portfolio with hardcore data analytics. So we hired a team of people who will do data analytics, and they would provide the research team with the necessary tools and understanding on how we can transform the research from not only qualitative, but also integrate the quantitative component to that, so that our analysis are more nuanced and rigorous. So that was one thing. Now, the second thing was the digitalization of IPRI, which I think was personally very important, and where my role was very interesting, was because, you see, an idea is an idea. It can be transformed into a book. It can be transformed into a journal article. It can transform into an op-ed or a tweet. But because of the digital world, now we're using all our senses. So we're looking at the visuals, we're looking at the animation, we're also looking at the text. So we decided that if we are the motherboard of ideas, then we don't want to only limit ourselves to the research products related to the papers or related to the books or the monologues, but we want to use those same academic ideas, transform them into infographics, bar race charts, new forms of animation, where we can tell the same story, the academic nuance, through different mediums. So that was the whole process of digitalization, where how do we communicate in a very different language, which is modern, which is more useful. So we undertook those things. But with what aim though? That was one of the key questions that Dr. Mohi Yusuf and when Brigadier Saab and all of us sat down. The question was that, look, it's very easy to compete locally in Pakistan. There are a very handful of think tanks. If we had to really reform and restructure it, we had two options. We were on analog, so we could either go to 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G, or we could just take a quantum leap from analog directly to the 5G. And that is exactly where we wanted to go, with an aim to become a globally competitive think tank, which can actually have a joint partnerships with good think tanks around the globe, Wilson Center, Brookings and all, but not just partnerships. What type of ideas are we producing? At the end of the day, this is exactly what our restructuring and reform theme was all about, that it all starts with an idea. And I think we will just go on a little bit detail on that. And so, with that, I will ask Hassan to play to ask my researchers as well to press the enter button so we can unveil our reform plans and the new outlook, and then we will go in discussion on that. So please.
It all started with a drop of an idea, powerful enough to build the entire planet. The idea is cultivated to bear fruits, but what keeps the fruits coming? A healthy flowing stream of ideas. Let's push the same aquatic analogy a little further to see how necessities turned to innovation through the same idea. As time passed, so did many civilizations, giving birth to science and technology, bringing us to the world we live in today, which is changing every second, every moment, every day. This brings us to one question: how do we understand and drive this constantly changing world we live in today to the direction we choose? Through ideas. Ideas are the dynamic force that drives economy, generating productivity, growth, which leads to the prosperity of nations, which is our vision at the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. It all starts with an idea.
Thank you for that, Hassan. As everybody would have noticed that we try to keep things very simple when it comes to reforms. And the idea was very, very simple. How do we focus on the low hanging fruits? How do we make Apri a platform where the new ideas could emerge in any format or in any way possible? And with that, I think this video explains very eloquently on how do we want to see Apri transforming not just this institution, but also becoming a sort of harbinger of change as well. Hassan, I would like to now request you to unveil our website so we can quickly go over the website for everyone to see. Now, if you could also please pass me the control of the website. Now, I'm not sure how many of you were able to see the IPRI's previous website. It was last updated, I think, in 2006 or 7. Which was one of the basic problems because the website was not interactive enough with the modern needs, and it was not user friendly, especially not on the mobile devices. This new website that we have created is basically very much digitalized. The focus was on how we can actually produce a website that can produce digital content in real time, and the users can engage more intimately with our website. So this is our main landing page. So if you can pass on the controller to me. Yeah, I'm sorry about this entire, yeah. So this is our main landing page. And we wanted to go on a very minimalist design. We did not want to have too much clutter on our web page, partly because the whole idea of our website was to keep it clean, keep it user friendly. Now, this is one of the things that we recently did some data analytics on, my team, that in the digital world, less is more. The less content we have, the better quality we have, the more traction it gets. So we wanted to keep our products and things very streamlined, which is why you won't see too much cluttering on our website. Also, if you can please take the page down. This is our Twitter feed, and we have the main header where the IPRI's background is done. Then we have our key products, IPRI Journal, which has been active for the last couple of years. IPRI Monograph, the new books that we come up with. IPRI Newsletter. One of the new things that we started off at the request of Dr. Mohi Yusuf was the IPRI Policy Brief. This is 3 to 4 page policy briefs that we send to different stakeholders in the government with actionable policy input with the proper matrix. So we don't provide any policy input which is not actually implementable. So a good policy is the one that can actually be implemented as well. So at the end of every policy brief, we have an action matrix with a whole set of tools where we suggest that these are the tasks, these are the items, these are the actors responsible, and this is the timeline when they need to be adopting those new policies. So it's not just a policy brief as such; it's also a policy action matrix. नीचे लेके आएं. This is our interactive map. You can click on any portion of this map and you will see that if you click on any of these, whatever we have published, whatever the webinars we've had, they will open up in one specific page. So it will give you a very good categorization of South Asia, Middle East, and Central Asia. The new additional thing is the IPRI Digital, where we will soon have our new in-house talk show based on data, very rigorous and very nuanced. Then we have our IPRI Baris charts and infographics that will be stocked right over here. So this will be our basically major outlook. Then we have IPRI events over here. I've been very proud that in the last 2 months, we've had over 9 webinars. And one of our webinars is due day after tomorrow as well with Wilson Center. So please do join that as well. We're also hosting an event with Senator Mushahid Hussain Sahab on Kashmir. So that is also going to be a very interesting event on the on October 27th. Kindly, Upar Legend, please. Okay, about us, overview of IPRI, please. I would do recommend you to please go over this website and give us your feedback after this event as well. This is the history of where we started off and where we are housed right now. Our vision is rather very simple: to spearhead a qualitative change in research and policy industry through data, innovation, and technology. Now, these are some of the words that we sat together and we wanted to include, because a think tank that is not innovating is not really a think tank enough. I think that, and the one way to go for innovation is through technology and through data. So we're focusing a lot on data, innovation, and technology as part of our vision, which is why we have embedded that for our future. Our mission statement is also rather very straightforward: to inform and drive change through research and dialogues on topics of contemporary relevance across all phases of national security. Now, this also includes human security, environmental security, and all facets of security that are there. One of the most interesting parts about our new outlook is the very diverse set of board of governors that we have. We have from private sector to former retired officials to academics. We have a very strong board of governors. Dr. Mohi Yusuf is right now the patron of our think tank, and he's the guiding force behind this entire change. We also have the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Information Minister, as part of our board of advisory group. Now, another thing that we wanted to do was that we wanted to go a little bit off traditional. So instead of only having an experts or board of governors who are traditional bureaucrats or the military officials or the retired ambassadors, we also set up a parallel board of advisory, expert advisory board of some of the top academics, young and top academics that are working on Pakistan and South Asia across the globe. So we have Dr. Natalia Naqvi, who's assistant professor at London School of Economics. We have Niloufar Siddiqui, Mishail Malik, who's at Harvard, Farah Naz, who's at NUST, Amna Qiyum at Princeton. So we have some really interesting set of people who are now part of our main expert advisory group, who will be advising us on different aspects of research and security. So the whole idea of this think tank is that it's going to become a conduit between the national security establishment in Pakistan and also the academia and the media community as well. Dr. Mohi Yusuf is our patron, and then we have the profiles of our entire team listed over here. Hassan Upar Leja, please. Please, publications mein aaj. On this page, you can find our publications, the journals, the monographs. So one thing we wanted to do was how do we make it more easier for the readers to go over our website and read our journal. Our journal was not initially an online journal. It still is not an online journal, but in the second phase, we want to convert this entire journal into a full-scale online journal, part of IPRI, but also separate from IPRI as well. So if you want to go over the archives, we have last 20 years of journals listed up into this archive. So we have the monographs present over here as well. And then we have other newsletters and IPRI policy briefs. And one of the last projects that I started off was analytics and projections. Now, this is one of the projects that I really wanted to start off, and which is something I'm really excited about. This is a half pager to one pager, very rigorous data-based analytics and projections. So you see, part of the job of a think tank is not only to do research of what happened, but also to provide research on what could possibly happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So kind of something that we set up over here is a futures divisions of the sort, where we would like to do data, futuristic data on, for instance, quantum mechanics and its application into social sciences and political science. Now, that is one of the areas where we want to go with this analytics and projections, because through this, we want to provide half pager to the national security establishment and to the government on way to look at for the future and how to think more strategically, but in a very small bite-size research and data. So that was it. Please, IPRI digital ko dikha dein zara. Click kar dein. IPRI Digital has a couple of interesting things which we're very, very excited about. Some of our infographics you must have seen already going viral on Twitter and other social media places. But like again, I said that the whole purpose of research is to produce ideas. But what medium do those ideas take is entirely onto us on how we want to project those. So IPRI infographics are new ways how we want to communicate those ideas. IPRI Policy Beats is one of our in-house shows that we are setting up, in the midst of setting it up. One of our researchers would be leading that, and it will be more of a nuanced, less TRP driven sort of show that we will be starting from here. In other words, we are trying to integrate the nuance of academia with the digitalization and produce shows and produce content that is more relevant to the digital needs. This is more or less the major chunk of our website, and you can go and have a look at it in more detail. There are two more things that I would like to talk about over here is where do we want to go in the future? So one of the things that I identified while we were doing the restructuring and reform was the significance and importance of the library. Now, we were getting tons and tons of requests from Mia Channu to all the way from Balochistan and Sakkar, from kids who wanted to have a digital library access. So I sat down with our team and the librarian over here, and what we will be doing in the next phase is we will be developing a full-scale IPRI library with an access to foreign books, journals, and different magazines, and we will open that to the public. So for a very small subscription fee, a token fee, we will be able to provide the largest resource, library resource that exists in Pakistan, and that is where we want to take the IPRI library as a very smart and modern library that can really provide a useful resource to our so many youth, the researchers and the academics as well. One last thing that we will be starting November and December is IPRI app. The reason why we wanted to have an app for IPRI is because there is so much content that is there and there is so much that is being produced. To be able to communicate effectively with the users, we wanted to have an app so that whenever there is new product that is out there, whenever there is a new notification or a new webinar or anything, there is a more friendlier engagement with our users as well. And through that app, we also want to transform the inner structure of IPRI as well, the administrative part. So right now, I mean, half of my work is literally on WhatsApp right now. I'm on 50 different groups, a research group, this group and that group. We want to transform that. We want to transform the work into IPRI app so that our researchers and core teams are interacting through the app instead of using WhatsApp, which is already cluttered in too many different ways. So with that, I'm going to stop myself, and we would like to play the message from Dr. Mohi Yusuf, who I'm afraid has not been able to join us today. I really wish Dr. Mohi was here, but we already presented him earlier yesterday. and he was very pleased to see the improvements and the restructuring process that we've done on his guidelines and on his taken his vision right to the implementation phase. So Hassan, if you could kindly play Dr. Mohi Yusuf's clip.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. It gives me great pleasure, first of all, to welcome you again to this relaunch of the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. You've just heard from our colleague, Brigadier Rashid, the background. I just want to take a few minutes to lay out what we are trying to achieve and where this larger space of think tanks stands and where it might go. The first thing I want to put on the table is the need to reform the Islamabad Policy Research Institute and indeed other think tanks in Pakistan. The world is changing, the world of policy making and policy research is changing, and the way governments are able to absorb input is changing. The information revolution, the communications revolution has forced governments to pay attention to social media, to electronic media, to operate in ways and at a pace that it was never required to. And this is happening globally. Pakistan's no exception. Happens everywhere around the world now. You've got to react at the drop of a hat, things change, and you respond. Countries and systems, in my view, in my personal view, that will come out on top as they grapple with this new world are ones that are able to go beyond firefighting and do strategic thinking. Ones that are prepared to deal with potential eventualities and don't have to think on the run or react all the time. Herein lies, I think, a critical role for think tanks. Because I think no public sector, I've spent a number of years in the US very closely looking at and being part of the US think tank circuit. Even in the US, it is impossible to envision or imagine that the state or the public sector machinery by itself will be able to do all kinds of strategic thinking, navel gazing, scenario building, and be prepared for the kind of things that are thrown up in terms of what may happen in the policy making space. When I started looking at the public sector in Pakistan, joined the public sector a year ago, one of the first things I realized was that we need to create coordinated mechanisms for policy input from outside the public sector. I used to do this sitting in Washington for a number of years, look at think tanks who are much more advanced and play this role, create influence on policy and create narratives around whatever policies are being shaped. And in Pakistan, we lacked this. And this is where the Islamabad Policy Research Institute, among other think tanks, our hope is will now become direct and constant contributors to policy thinking. The National Security Division, in which IPRI is housed, is actually setting up and launching a portal for universities and think tanks in Pakistan, literally within the next week, whereby we will give access to all institutions working on issues of national security to provide input on aspects of policy that they feel needs improvement, or new areas that the government and the state may not be thinking about, or things that we may be doing well but could be improved. The Islamabad Policy Research Institute has been a pioneer institute since 1999. There's no question about it. Many of you I know have participated in IPRI conferences, have written for the IPRI journal. So it's not like IPRI is new. It is not like that it hasn't already created a mark and created a place for itself. But it's really about making IPRI a top 10, 20, 30 think tank in the world. From here to there is the journey that the National Security Division wants IPRI to take, for it to be a recognized, renowned name around the world, not just in Pakistan. How do you get there? Number one, you produce the kind of policy research that is actionable, implementable, and can be picked up by policymakers and if deemed to be appropriate, implemented as soon as possible. One of the things I've learned in my career is that the more specific you are, the more actionable you are in your input, the more likely it is to be read and taken up. IPRI has started a new policy brief series. IPRI is starting a new data analytics and infographic series. Why? Because this is how conversations are happening now in the policy world, including in Pakistan. So the first part is research. There's going to be a very strong focus on quality. Second, how do you digitize and how do you operate in the world of electronic media and social media and digitization to promote the rightful narratives that the state of Pakistan, the people of Pakistan want to see projected, for the world to understand what Pakistan is. Remember, Pakistan is a state, unfortunately, that's had a very negative perception in many countries since 9/11, very unfairly so, but partly because the projection and the strategic communication conversation was not happening the way it should have, and the world really picked up others' views about Pakistan and tried to make that Pakistan's view. So this is not about parroting a narrative. This is about projecting nuanced analytical narratives to generate debates. So that's my second hope as far as the future of the Institute is concerned. But perhaps most important for this audience is IPRI is available, should be available, needs to be available, and wants to be available for partnerships. IPRI and other think tanks around the world who are working on Pakistan need to come together, joint events, joint products, and joint brainstorming. Because if the ultimate goal of think tanks is to look at policies, look at the policy space in general, and advise policymakers, provide them new avenues that make peace building and avoidance of conflict more likely, then all resources must be pooled. I'm not a fan of looking at think tanks as competitors. I'm not a fan of looking at think tanks as, oh, this is a British or a Chinese or an American or a Singaporean or a Pakistani think tank. This is a space of idea generation and intellect. And I think that's where think tanks must come together from around the world, benefit each other, complement each other's work, and drive the world to become a better place. To my mind, the future of think tanks does not lie in writing 50-page reports. It does not lie in chasing funding for projects. It lies in pithy, crisp, succinct policy analysis with actionable input. It lies in having access to policymakers to provide them verbal input as much as possible, given the paucity of time in the policy domain. It lies in digitization of products, and it lies in partnerships to think innovatively beyond just the normal cliches, polemics, and the rhetoric. The last thing on this initiative is that we would like other think tanks to join hands, come to Pakistan, study Pakistan, do joint work, and understand for yourself what today's Pakistan is. Move away and move beyond the rhetoric and the narratives 20 years ago. Pakistan is a country that has come out of a very difficult time with terrorism. We have defeated the menace. We are now working on a holistic approach to development, to national security. The core of Pakistan's vision and the Pakistani Prime Minister's vision is economic security. Everything else must flow from that. Pakistan stands for regional connectivity. Pakistan stands to become the geo-economic hub for positive global interests. We want a confluence of interests between great powers. We want our territory to be used as the investment hub, as the trade and transit hub. We want Pakistan to be seen as the development and the economic security state that provides avenues for great power and global tussles to be addressed, to be soothed, to be brought together to complement each other. That's the kind of country we foresee. That's the kind of region we foresee. Unfortunately, because of factors which are beyond our control, because of chaos on our eastern border, unfortunately, because of certain elements and states in the region that have not signed up to the vision of peace. We are far away from realizing that. But that's really where Pakistan needs to go. We want you to come, we want you to work in the intellectual space, see the country for yourself, guide the countries you sit in, guide Pakistan along with IPRI and in partnership with IPRI and other think tanks. Please do work with the Institute, do visit our new website that reflects the change that we are talking about. Support our work and help us support your work and move our countries and the globe forward and to become a more peaceful and better place for all, including and most importantly the deprived, underprivileged citizens of our countries and the world. I once again congratulate IPRI on the relaunch. We've got a very dedicated team. We've got a team that is working day and night and has made IPRI's future their passion. I'm grateful to them. I am honored to be the ex officio patron in my current position as the Prime Minister's Special Assistant, and we will together and with partners who are the audience today make IPRI one of the strongest and leading think tanks in the world. So thank you very much for joining us, and I hand it back to Brigadier.
I would like to thank Dr. Mohi Yusuf and to Brigadier Rashid Ali Janjua for their remarks. So would you like to give the closing remarks?
Could you unmute? Right, thank you very much, Dr. Nadeem. I thank all participants who joined us this evening to have a look on our new relaunch. I am sanguine that IPRI, with its reoriented shape, is going to be a very potent think tank in the think tank community. And as our patron has already pointed out, that we are very favorably poised to take our research products ultimately to the policy-making community. And the gap which was felt between the policy-making and the scholarly research is henceforth going to be bridged through very effective research products that would definitely carry, if not every recommendation, but many nuggets amongst those in the policy-making hubs to make some difference at the very highest level. And we would definitely need the guidance and help of all the research community of Pakistan, with whom we would henceforth very actively engage to not only to garner their inputs, but to share our thoughts and be part of the shared community. And as they say, if we become part of this community of knowledge, the community of knowledge begins with a step in the right direction that we have taken. And with our new enhanced global outreach capacity, thanks to you, Dr. Nadeem, for all your labors and your day and night efforts of the team which has worked on this to enable our website and our digitalization, which is going to be a very puissant tool in our effort for our global outreach. So with these words, I thank all the participants for having been with us, and I'm sure you will engage with us on many future interactions. Thanks, and over to you, Nadeem.
Thank you everyone for joining and taking out the time. One last thing I would like to say on this thing. We may have completed our reform and restructuring process, but this is by no means the end. It's rather very easy to reform and undertake reforms of an institution, but to continue and sustain those reforms, to develop into a quality institution is a tedious and the harder part. So the easier part is done, the harder part is yet to come. And I'm looking forward to interacting with everyone over here who has joined. I am available on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm very active everywhere. Please do give me the feedback. It's very important, and I will be very honest that some of the best ideas that we've incorporated have come from Twitter and other places. I'm sorry if I'm not able to respond to all the messages, but I would like to respond as much as I can to great ideas and anything. If you want to be part of our organization, we are constantly hiring great talent. We're constantly partnering. So I'll be in charge of that. Please do connect with me. If you're coming back from abroad to Pakistan, or you have a great research idea, please do pitch us that. The whole idea of IPRI is that this is a bridge between the public, intelligentsia, and between the government. So if we have a good idea, even if you don't have that sort of academic rich background, but do share our ideas, and we will soon be unveiling on how to develop a sort of matrix to share the ideas. So please do keep in touch and follow our work. It was my pleasure to host this event today.